Hello, everybody. Jason here with Summit Initiative. You're about to watch or listen to an interview, just a conversation with a dear friend of mine, Christy deGuzman. Christy joined us in South Korea in January, and God's been doing incredible things in her heart since then, and even leading up to that point. Christy's story is one of heartache as she has lost her husband, and just patiently waiting and leaning into and connecting to God as He instills this hope and this excitement for what the future holds for her. So, if you love stories like this, or if you like this stuff, please do us a favor. You can share this with other people. You can share the links in whatever media that you're watching this in. You can like and subscribe to whatever wherever you're watching or listening to this in. And if you want to learn more about Summit Initiative, you can go to our website, summitstory.org, or you can email me directly, jason@summitstory.org. But I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I have, and enjoy.
It's been way too long. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Life is kind of in this weird transition time for me. And
Sure.
so, like, things are going good at my job, but my school is closing. And
Oh,
so they're closing, we're all getting fired, and then they're reopening as a new entity. So we have to reapply. And so, in
wow.
that whole process, my financial advisor is just telling me, you really can't just work part time, you need to work more. And so I'm like, okay, so what do I do? Do I apply at the school again? Do I try to go for something else?
Yeah.
I'm like trying to work all that out. And so a couple of opportunities have come up, and I'm just praying, God direct me, because I feel like I'm just in the mist. Like everything, usually when I pray, I just get the Lord has been so gracious ever since Norm died to just help me with like clear direction. Like, I'm going to pray about this.
Mm.
It's either a yes or a no. He's been just real direct with me. And I feel like I've been praying and praying, Lord, give me like a desire for one thing over another, or like insight. What should I do? Direction, nothing. It's just like this kind of like
Just say
foggy.
wait. Just
Yeah,
wait.
it is. It's just wait.
Oh,
And so I'm like trying to take the steps that are in front of me, really not having any clear direction. And so
sure.
hoping that just as I walk along and continue praying, he's going to kind of reveal to me what he wants. And so anyway, so my job is not open yet on the portal for applying,
Right.
but my church has a school that they just opened. I think they're in their second year. And so coming next year will be their third year,
Mm.
and they're looking for teachers. And so I applied, and I have an interview this Friday for a second grade teacher position, and it's only part-time, but it's at this point more hours that I'm getting at my school. Though my school is now starting to say we could probably use you full time, but it's like up in the air. So I don't know. It's just weird. And then let's see. So I'm in the soul care department. I think I told you I'm working with
Mm.
grief share and biblical counseling class. I'm a table leader for our counseling course. And so after class one day, and I don't know why, it was so random, but the Lord kind of walked me through this process during the week of a homework assignment that we were going to have the following week, and I didn't know that. And so then our pastor asked us, would someone please volunteer to like give a little short testimony of this process? And I was like, wow, that's weird. The Lord just like really just walked me through that without realizing. So I
Wow.
said, okay, I guess I can't say no. I can't not share. So I shared, and one of the things that I had shared was this kind of, and not angst, but just like this feeling of just like, Lord, I just want you to use me. And I know that this is a time of waiting. I know this is a time of equipping, but I'm feeling like there's nothing left for me to do. Like,
Mm.
being a pastor's wife without a pastor husband, what is it? What did you make me for? And so anyway, just that kind of process, and that now it's kind of coming to a head, that the trigger for that was the losing the job and wondering what's next, and having desires, but knowing I'm not ready for those things yet. And so anyway, after I shared that and just the verses that the Lord brought to my mind and that whole process of just kind of like giving that over to the Lord and finding what does he value? It's not in all the things that I can do. It's who he's made me to be in that communion, abiding with him and growing in faith and love and, all those things. And so anyway, just really grounding myself again, just in the gospel and who I am in Christ and what he values. And so it was really sweet. Anyway, this lady came up to me afterwards. She goes, there's going to be a job opening at the church. It's a full-time position in soul care, like
Wow.
organizing and like making sure that everyone has what they need for ministry, like all the different ministry leaders within soul care and the ones who are leading groups and whatever, and coordinating and helping people as like they apply to receive biblical counseling at the church and get them through that intake process. And I'm like, oh, well, that kind of sounds like something that I could do maybe. And so anyway,
Right
so
up my alley, right? It's right
yeah,
up your alley.
so I'm applying for that too and wondering, okay, well,
Cool.
it's all like kind of happening now, but then not happening yet. And it's like this
Yeah.
weird, hurry up, get your application in, but then wait, nothing's
Oh,
happening.
the story of my life, I feel like. Yeah, so that's so good.
Yay!
How do you do in seasons of waiting like that? Like how does it feel?
Huh. I I think I'm doing like good overall. I think I've been a little bit emotional. I'm, helping with grief share. It's funny
Mm,
because I've gone through grief share before, like right after Norm died. And I didn't love it, but I loved the connection that I made with the group that I was with. And so I was eager to do that again, just even to provide that and to go through that process with people. And
yeah.
but it's interesting going through it again. It has kind of like brought some of those issues back up. Not that I'm like grieving Norm's loss again, but it's weird. I think it's like morphed into, I'm not sad really about Norm being gone. There's things, of course, I miss about him. I loved him
Sure.
dearly, but the Lord has been so near to me. He's just become so
Mm,
precious that it's like, I can't grieve that or want to go back to it anymore. It's like, my life is sweet with the Lord. So I don't have like miss his presence necessarily or
sure.
just miss that relationship. But I think the weird thing that's happening is it's changed into this like settling into this is just life now. This is life without him.
Mm,
Now you don't have any autonomy. You live in a room in your sister's house. You don't have a home that you take care of. You can't practice hospitality. You like it's who I am, and that's how I
yeah.
served and lived was um I think of every holiday, it was like looking around to who didn't have a place and welcoming them to our home. I
Mm,
planned the meals. And it's like now that I'm home, it's just assumed I'll go to mom's. Well, that's why I came home was to go to mom's and have that relationship. But it's like she's planning the menu and telling me what to bring. I have half a refrigerator. I have half a pantry. All those things. I'm content, but it's like weird to just not
yeah.
have a place where I express myself of who I am. Making a home was always just part of me. And
Yeah.
so I think that's what I'm starting to grieve. It's just kind of this weird, like, oh,
Mm,
all that is gone and it's new and that's okay. But it's like it's been a process. And so
sure.
I think that's probably why I'm a little more emotional. And so in this time of waiting, I have this sense of like, I know that God has plans for me. I know that he's going to use me. I know that he's going to bless me. I know um that I have a future and a hope, but I can't see it. And so because it's emotional, because of the kind of grieving process as going through
Mm,
the grieving of Norm's loss behind me and now the reality
yeah.
that okay, day after day I'm just going to work to live to work and there's nothing. It's like that it's
Yeah.
not enough. And certainly
Oh,
it's not because I know God has something else for me. And so it's just that waiting, I guess, has been emotional but also sweet. Like I feel like the Lord's using it. It's a transition that the Lord's using. It's not just torture. It's
yeah.
like productive. Like it's producing in me greater faith. It's producing in me like a deeper reliance on the Lord. A really he's teaching me so much about prayer and like this is a weird situation. I have to tell you that it's just like a tiny little
Yeah.
story. I'd been reading about prayer and practicing, just Lord, help me to learn how to pray deeper. Help me to learn more intimacy in prayer and what that looks like. What do you expect from me in prayer? And I sometimes have a hard time praying because, like, one, I feel like, well, what if I don't know God's will? I don't want to pray for the wrong thing, which is silly, but that there's that. And
I
then,
get it. I get it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, and I was reading this book and it so clearly described, oh, that's what I do. And he said, sometimes we over spiritualize prayer. And I was like, over spiritualize prayer is like the most spiritual thing we can do, right? But
Yeah.
the way he said it was like, um, okay, so like Jesus's prayer in the garden, take this cup from me. And he prayed like with tears and sweating blood, right? Take this cup from
Yeah.
me, not my will, but your own. And sometimes we over spiritualize by not my will, but yours, without ever asking, take this cup from me. And so we're not
Wow.
coming authentically and just like giving our heart to the Lord. We're skipping over that intimacy part. And I'm telling you what I want. I'm asking, I'm begging from my Father this thing. And I'm saying, oh, but whatever you want, I'm not going to tell you what I want, just whatever you want for me.
Yeah.
And I was like so struck by that because I have a friend who I love dearly, but every time we get together, I'm like, hey, where do you want to go? Wherever you want to go. Well, what do you want to eat? Whatever you want to eat. What do you want to watch? Whatever you want to watch. I'm like, you're my friend. I want to know what you care about. And it
Yeah.
just was such a clear picture to me, like, okay, I'm not coming with authenticity. I'm not giving my heart to the Lord. I'm just asking for his, but it's a two-way thing. And so
Mm.
he's really kind of teaching me about communion. And then about boldness. So this is the story I was referencing. So I'm in the gas station and I'm getting gas in the car. I finish up, I get back in the car, I'm putting my card in my wallet and I put it in my purse. And this lady comes walking up to my car. And she's like looks nicely dressed. She's like wearing athletic clothes, but she's clean. It doesn't look like she's destitute or, living
Sure.
on the street or anything like that. But she comes up to my window and she like asks me to roll down the window. And I was like, okay. So she rolls down the window. She was like, can you buy me something to eat? I was like, well, I only have a couple dollars. I can give you what I have. And she said, that's not going to help me. Will you buy me something to eat? I was like, well, there's a Burger King right there. She pointed out, she was like, there's one right here. Can you take me there? I'm like, I really only have these couple dollars cash. And she goes, don't you have a card? I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
I guess I do. And so I thought about it for a minute. I prayed. I'm like, you know what? I would be happy to. So I took her over, or met her rather. She was walking and so I just met her over there. And so I rolled down my window. I said, what would you like? What do you want? And so she ordered like the biggest thing on the menu
Of
and a
course.
milkshake and all this stuff. And I'm like,
All
okay.
right. She's going for it.
And then she was like, she turns to me, she's like, do you want anything? I'm like, no, I'm good. So anyway, get the
It's
food,
amazing.
hand it to her, and she was like, okay, thanks. And she walks away. And I was like, rolling up my window and getting ready to drive away. I'm like, wow, that was bold.
Yeah.
And it was like the Lord just went, yes, that was bold. You asked what she wanted, and she told you. And she didn't hesitate to just ask for what she wanted. And he goes, that's what I want. I'm asking you, what do you want?
Mm.
I'm asking you, what do you want? And you don't even want to tell me. You want to order a Happy Meal, but that's not what you want, And it
Oh,
was like, oh, he just like gave me this picture of what it means to ask boldly and just to say, and not to say he's a vending machine, but like, tell me what you want and leave it up to me if that's my will for you. But I have a
yeah.
father's heart that wants to give. And so tell
Mm.
me. And it was like, oh, so it's like, that's a long, long way to answer your question. What's the waiting
S-
time like? And I feel like that's what's happening. It's like he's talking to me and teaching me and growing me in so many ways, stretching me. And like I
mm.
said, it's not that I'm without emotion or I'm all happy. I'm crying, but I'm crying to him and he's
Yeah.
there and he's answering and just really, I think it's a fruitful time, even though it feels like long and shrouded.
Yeah, unknown, right? Like it's just like that. It's that wilderness or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah,
right? Where you're just kind of
yeah,
like, when, Lord?
yeah.
But that, you know what? How cool? Can I just say how cool it is that you were present enough in the moment
Mm,
to be able to go, Lord, what, there's this opportunity. This lady's doing something,
yeah,
and just to be aware enough to kind of go, yes, yeah, I'll go get you that. Because most people would just be like, no, I don't have any money. See you later.
yeah,
Just kind of
yeah.
right, because whether she was homeless or not, it doesn't really
Mhm.
matter.
Right.
When we get confronted like that, it's
Mhm.
I get, I used to work downtown Seattle,
Yeah.
and it was just like you would just get bombarded by
Mm,
stuff. And
mhm.
what was interesting, you remind me of a story. I remember like praying once, going, Lord, I mean, this is overwhelming. I'll go broke,
Yeah.
$5, $10 at a time,
Right.
trying to help people out.
Yeah.
And so I said, this can't be the answer. And so I was like, how about this, God? I will, anytime anybody asks for money, because I don't carry cash on me,
Yeah.
then I'll say, no, sorry, I don't have any money. Because it's true. I'm not lying to them.
Yeah.
But if anyone ever asks for food,
Mhm.
then I'll stop what I'm doing and then I'll
Uh-huh.
go and get them some food. Right. Which
Uh-huh.
is what this lady asked you. She
Yeah.
didn't ask for cash. She's like, no,
Right?
I want food.
Yeah.
And I remember walking down the street at a lunch break once, and I walked past this guy and he goes, "Hey man, do you have any food?" It was the
Mm.
only time out of the years I worked in downtown Seattle where someone asked for food, and
Wow.
I just walked past him, and I
Mm.
kept walking, and I remember like I got about a block away, and went, and I feel like there was the Holy Spirit going, "Jason, you made a promise." Okay.
Mm.
So I turn around and I go back and I go,
Yeah.
"Hey, you asked me for food." And there
Uh-huh.
was like a sandwich place right next door. And I
Uh-huh.
said, can I buy a sandwich? He's like, really? Yeah. So we get in line, and it was kind of a very similar situation.
Yeah.
Although he was maybe a little bit less bold,
Mhm.
and get in line, and I'm getting a story a little bit. I'm just like, hey, so what's your name? Where you from? Like kind of the basic, like where were you born and brought up? And his name was Randy. He was from Alaska. He was waiting on a job and he had just gotten to Seattle, according to his story.
Yeah.
And then we got to the end, and I had ordered a sandwich, but I made my sandwich the same sandwich as his sandwich, so that when we got
Okay.
to the end, because I'd already eaten, and so
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
thought I was buying him a sandwich, and I bought two sandwiches and then two little dessert things and some drink. And I said, "Hey, this is all yours, man. Like, God
Wow.
bless you.
Yeah.
I hope that you, I'm just trying to show God's love to you in a practical way. That's it, man." And so
Wow.
that was it. I've never seen Randy again. I walked
Wow.
away, but I remember going, it was so easy for us to not be present in the moment,
Mm.
and you chose to be present in the moment to be
Mm.
able
Mm.
to meet this lady's need, and in the process, God spoke to you through it,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
awesome. Are you
Amazing.
kidding me? It's so cool.
Oh, that's
I
amazing.
uh I was reading this, I think it was this book or devotional or something like that this last week, and it's in the book it was talking about being present, right? Like, why don't you take a second and stop worrying about the past.
Mm.
Don't think about the past. It just brings up shame. It brings up guilt. If you're not
Mhm.
free from some of this stuff, or hurt, right? Just past
Mhm.
hurt, which
Mhm.
there's a time for that, certainly,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
not always. And stop worrying about the future, because that's where you're at. You're at this like easily I can look to the future and go, I that could cause worry, right? That
Yeah.
could cause anxiety. It can cause stress, and that's typically, I never really look to the future with this overly hopeful optimism. It's usually like, "Oh, I don't know what's going to happen." Like, I don't know. And, but this book was a challenge, or devotional, whatever it was a challenge to go like, hey, be present in the moment. So
Mm.
I go for a walk in the morning as much as I can. And I got out of the house, and the day before I had been pruning my tree. So I have a cherry tree out front here,
Uh-huh.
and it's getting very large, and I'm
Okay.
certain that my neighbors are going to start complaining about it obstructing their views or whatever, right? So I'm like, I probably should be a good neighbor and prune this thing. And
Uh-huh.
I start cutting away the day before, and I realize I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know how to prune a cherry tree. Like, what
Yeah.
am I? I'm just cutting away, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm going to kill this poor tree.
Oh,
And
no.
so I stopped. I got halfway through it. And I went, I got to stop, and I got to like do some research.
Yeah.
So as I'm walking out the next morning, I went, okay, I'm going to my like practicing being present. I'm going to walk through the neighborhood, and I'm
Uh-huh.
going to look at all of my neighbors' trees.
Oh.
And I'm going to like, maybe I can get some ideas on how they prune.
Yeah.
because they're from this area. Most of them are, they've been here
Uh-huh,
forever. Probably a lot of them are orchardists, right? For all I know. And they're
uh-huh,
just looking at
uh-huh.
me cutting away at the tree going, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. And, and as I'm walking and I'm like trying to be present and I'm praying, I'm like, Lord, help me teach me, like show me these trees. And as I walked, I realized none of my neighbors prune their trees. None
Oh,
of them do. And I'm like, this is so I'm getting a little bit frustrated.
yeah, yeah.
And then my mind starts to creep into the future, right? Where I go, well, I'm just okay. When I get home, I'm going to go jump on YouTube and I'll start researching this stuff or, whatever. And the God's like, slow down, come back to the present. I'm trying to
Oh,
show you something.
interesting.
And so as I'm walking, I'm like, okay, stop thinking about when I get home, like just stay in the present. And I'm walking around the neighborhood and it was just my thought process. I felt like it was the Holy Spirit drawing this thought process out in me. And he said, why is it that your neighbors don't prune their trees? And I'm like, I don't know. Well, I guess they're not fruit trees. And God's like, yeah, they're not fruit trees. So you don't need to prune a tree that's not a fruit tree. I mean, maybe you should for the sake of the view, right? But
Yeah.
you don't have to prune a tree that doesn't bear fruit because you're not
Mm,
worried about producing. So because we prune in order to produce more fruit, so that the
right.
fruit can be good and healthy and thick and heavy and what you want. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm the only one in the neighborhood I think has fruit trees. And I went, okay, well, that helps, I guess. And then God was like, he just, again, it was just just being in the moment, being able to go through this process of thinking about this. And God was like, the trees that your neighbors have they bear seed, but not fruit. And
Mm,
seed is good for the sake of the tree, right? It's going to reproduce. It's not a bad thing. But the fruit tree is a benefit to those around it, right? It provides food and sustenance. And so I'm like, oh, that's cool. I never thought about it like that. So I'm just like having this, conversation with the Lord as I'm walking, which helps me be present.
huh?
And then God goes, he just basically goes, I prune you because you're a fruit tree. I don't prune everybody. And I'm
Wow.
like, oh, like, okay. Okay. So then if that's the case, and you prune because you want to produce more fruit for the benefit of the people around,
Yeah.
for your kingdom, for fruit for your kingdom, then prune away.
Wow.
And I just went and helped me to teach me how to be a better pruner, Lord. Like not just spiritually and physically. Like I just need to figure out how to do that. And it
Wow.
was a beautiful, like
Mm,
kind of like you reminded me of that story because it was that ability to be present to hear from the Lord, where
mm,
that's where He's speaking in the moment. He's
yeah.
not answering the questions for the future, right? He's just for me at least, and
Yeah.
right now He's not for you.
Right.
But what He's saying in the moment is, I have things to teach you
Yeah.
and hold on to these things. And so I hope that um, you know, that we can wait with hopeful anticipation,
Yeah.
even in the scary moments, right? That
Yeah.
God's going to be good and faithful.
Amen.
So anyway, thanks for sharing your story. You
And
got
thank
me.
you. That's awesome. I love that. I love that he talks with us. You
Yeah,
know what I
it's cool.
mean? Like, wow, that's so neat that he would like have a conversation with you out on your walk. It's
Just in
like,
a random neighborhood.
oh, I know, right? What a
I
way.
I often wonder as I'm walking around the neighborhood because I feel like when I pray, sometimes I actually move my mouth, and I
Yeah,
wonder if
yeah.
my neighbors think I'm just totally crazy. Like, they're going, dude, there's that guy who talks to himself again. He seems normal, but I think something's off. I'm going, well, okay. If you're going to be crazy, you might as well be crazy for God, right?
That's
Not
it. That's it.
if people are going to think I'm crazy anyways. So, oh, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that story. That's really cool. And maybe God's pruning you. Maybe that's where you're in it. Maybe he's just going, hey, I'm about to produce some fruit through you. And that's hopeful, right? To go
It
like,
is.
Christy, he's got plans for you. It's just
Yeah.
a matter of, you know, just a matter of waiting for that season of fruit bearing to come around, which it's going to come around. I
Yeah.
know that tree's going to bear fruit. Well,
Right?
maybe not this year, maybe not this year, but
At
but
least
I
half of
know,
it.
yeah, some of it will. Yeah. But I know that there's going to be, you know, the fruit trees. I mean, we see the orchards right now. They're, cherry and pear and all that stuff in town. And they have, because it's starting to get warm, they've all started pruning, that's why I'm like, I need to prune
Yeah.
because I'm seeing these guys do it. And they spray the trees with this white clay, which is cool because when the kids were little, we would drive around and they would say, hey, Dad, look, the ghost trees, because they look completely dead. They're just, and you've
Interesting.
heard me say this, they look completely dead. They're sprayed bright white. So
Yeah.
it's like these white trees, and you're going, there's no way that whole entire orchard looks decimated, destroyed, right? And
Yeah.
I know that in 3 months, like there's gonna be so much fruit on those trees, right?
Yeah.
Like, or 6 months or whatever it is. Like it's
Yeah.
gonna be, they're gonna, the branches will be prone to break because because of the load of fruit and the cherries and the pears. And you're just going, okay, that's what I want, Lord.
Yeah. Yeah.
Spiritually speaking, I
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
fruit, your fruit. So
Yeah.
super cool. Well, I'll be
Yeah.
praying for you. I'll be
Thank
praying
you.
for you that God leads you well. What do you feel like God was saying to you in Korea? And I don't have an agenda like to try to draw anything out. I'm just curious because I know that we talked a little bit about it, but what was your experience like? What was he saying to you? Because you shared your story twice.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It was so
Which was
amazing.
amazing.
Jason, it was so crazy to share it twice and in different places because it was such a different experience each time. I mean, you saw it. Like the responses that I got the first time was like, I felt it like it was so weird to feel like I was receiving more than I was giving. I'm like, I'm here to give. And it was just like they had so much to say to me and pour into me. It was just the weirdest thing. I felt like wrong about it in some ways. And then I just had to relax and be like, this is what you're saying, Lord. Like, I just
Yeah.
felt like it was just, I was drinking in everything that they gave back to me. And I mean, you included, like everybody just spoke into my heart. And I just feel like
Mhm.
it was like just washed over me in such a special way. And like those verses that the pastor read over me. And I don't know, they just like spoke to me in such a deep, intimate, personal way in like this kind of healing way. And then the next it started at that time, but then in the next workshop, I think I was mentioning to you that I went from like hearing it as the very first time I went through it, just like trying to process, I don't understand this whole my story thing and trying to figure that out. How do I do this? So it was like
Yeah.
really rough the first time. And that was when I went through it with Chris in the summer. And then when you taught it again in November, it was like, okay, I have a place for this now. I'm starting to like kind of see how this goes together. So I had kind of written out my story and I got to share it with my little group, as we broke out. And then to go and sit as you taught it again and like, okay, now it wasn't so much about formulating my story because I'd done that. It was like starting to see, okay, the links in there. And like you were talking about seeing God's fingerprint on your life and how um starting to see a theme. So I was starting to make some connections in that theme and what did he kind of weave into my life as a thread of a story or within the story kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the last time was then the second time when I um was able to tell my story. And then the response was so different. It was like for them. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was just like the first time was like, Lord, I didn't mean for it to be, but it just felt like it was all for me. And then the second time was like, then that pastor standing up and saying he was ready to divorce his wife. And then he was going to offer forgiveness and find satisfaction in God alone. And I was like, she just have to find a little story, and I don't know. So it was just so neat. I think that process and just seeing the turning it outward and just seeing that whole process happen. But I think what he did through the two times that I got to sit through the workshop with you in person was seeing that fingerprint and kind of starting to feel that pulse of, okay, so what did you make me for? What is
Mm.
that? How do you want to use me? If this is how you've made me and you want to use me, would it not make sense that you'd want to use me kind of related to how you made me? You know what I mean? And so kind of
Sure.
seeing that. So I think it started this process of thinking through. And I got to kind of, after I got back, look through some old journals. And it was so interesting because the thread has always been there and I didn't really recognize it. Even as I went through,
Oh,
it was like, I was asking the same things like 8 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago. I mean, 2 years ago. And like, but not realizing it was the same maybe I asked it in different ways or about different circumstances, but the thread was always the same. And it was like, wow, I don't think I would have ever gone back and seen that, except for
Mm.
what I know what I would have seen. I would have been like, I never change. I'm always going through the same thing, and been like, don't I ever grow? But I didn't see that. I saw, oh, whatever I was going through, it was the same thread. And it was like, wow, that's so neat. And so then to kind of evaluate and take that and be like, okay, so if you want to use me and if you've made me this way, what might that look like? And if I could dream big, and if it could be like, Lord, I would love for you to use me this way because I see this that you've made me to be.
Yeah.
And it's so, and then in line with like what he's been teaching me about boldness and prayer and like asking for that big thing, and just like, would you do that? I would be like, so amazing. You don't have to, but would you like to do that?
So cool.
Can you make me ready? And so it's just, I don't know. So I feel like that's what he started. I don't know if like,
Mm.
obviously not completed, but it's given me kind of a hopefulness and like, I don't know. I looked back and, oh, I went to a missions conference. I opened my journal and I was getting ready to write I didn't even know I had written in this journal. And so it was like only a couple pages. I'm famous for that, like starting a journal and not finishing it. So I opened it.
Guilty. Totally guilty.
The first 2 pages, it was like, oh Lord, I went to the missions conference this weekend and you're stirring those old desires in me to be a missionary. And it's like,
Oh,
again, Lord, like I forgot that. And it's like, wow, it's never ended. It's from when I was a little girl, and
so
now to
cool.
have this life where kind of life is before me, like nothing's, of course for him it is, but nothing's written yet. Like I don't have a husband telling me where I need to go or what I need to do or
Yeah.
how I need to support his ministry. But like the Lord can just lead me. And if that's a desire he's put in me since I was a little girl and just like kept on pushing, maybe that's what he has for me, and that
Amazing.
it's a certain direction and it's a certain way that I would do that. And it's like, huh, I didn't realize, but it was all
So
there.
cool.
I just didn't see it. So that's,
I love it. I
I
love
don't
it.
know.
Well, okay, so here's a question for you.
Yeah.
What do you think one of the themes were? Like, what was the main theme that you were drawing out of your story?
Home, like being a home, making a home, pointing to God as our home and like providing that for people, like being a home so they could see who is our real home and like a place to nurture. And I was thinking, Lord, I have such a heart for the lost. Like I want to see the world saved, you know what I mean?
Mm.
And worshipers made. And yet, all throughout my life, it's so weird to think about it. I feel like ashamed sometimes. I'm like, it's not that I haven't had fruitful ministry, but like, though I've had a heart and I pray for the lost, I haven't had fruitfulness in evangelism, like
Ah, sure.
reaching the lost. I just haven't. And though I have a burden for that, my passion is for the church to grow in depth and to be
Mm.
mobilized and to be like going out, and like,
Mm.
I guess, equipping, preparing, nurturing, healing, comforting so that then they can go and do. And that's kind of
Awesome.
like where my heart is. And so I was thinking that verse in it's Thessalonians, I think it's you'll know exactly which one I'm talking about. I can't remember if it's second or first. Oh, First Thessalonians 5, like 14. And we urge you, brothers, admonish the idle, encourage the faint-hearted, help the weak, and be patient with them all. And I see that kind of as like
Mm.
my ministry. It's like where I'm fruitful. Like when I get plugged into a formal ministry at church, I can do it. And I can like, I've taught at women's conferences. I've like directed VBS. I've done Sunday school. Like I've done the things, and God has been so merciful. There's been joy in those serving times. There's been fruitfulness. But when I really find fruit is when someone comes into my home and sits at my
Mm.
table and we share a cup of coffee and a scone, and I hear their heart and point them to the word and encourage them or challenge them, exhort them. And I don't know, that's when I find, even if it's in the
Mm.
hallway at church, like it's still, I think, a hospitality. It's a welcome, and it's a pointing upward. It's a pointing to the home and healing that God is for us, and that he is our ultimate home. And I think, so I think that's where I've found the most fruitfulness and the most joy in serving, when it's just organic and like person to person, like one-on-one, but not like they signed up for counseling and I'm, meeting with them. Not that that can't be fruitful. And I know God has used those times, but it's like the spontaneous. I see someone in the hallway and they don't look right. And I say, "Are you all right? What can I pray for you? What's going on? What's happening? I don't
Yeah.
see that brightness I always see in your face." And they start weeping and say, "I'm broken. I'm broken right now. Okay, I'll pray for you. How can I help you? What can we do? Do you want to meet together? Whatever." And I had one gal come up to me, and this is like, again, this is so not like to point to me. It's all about
Oh,
God
of
ordained
course.
this moment. But she goes, "Christy, that little moment we had in the hallway changed the trajectory of my life. Like our marriage. We're talking in different ways now. We're like healing and growing, and I had lost hope." And it's like, all I did was cry with you and pray with you and say, "I'm gonna bear this burden with you," and it's like, that's where there's so much joy. And it's like, I didn't orchestrate that. I could never have planned it. I didn't even know this gal. It was like, I learned her name that day, it was like,
Yeah.
wow. And so it's not even been an ongoing ministry, but it was just that shared moment and that, giving of hope and giving of life and comfort, and yet challenge and admonishment to keep going, you know, stay
Yeah.
faithful, cling to Christ. And so that's how I kind of see it. But I see it in the context of a place where people can come and
Mm.
heal.
You have
And
you have such a caring, like, shepherd's heart. It's so it's so good. I mean, you said where, and I can imagine where, like, the season you have yourself in where you can't have a space for that, right? So we're
yeah,
like to invite people into that space, it's difficult.
it
But
is.
I there's a story, and I can't remember where it comes from. It just came to mind as you were talking of this guy who was in World War One and they were fighting through France. I
Uh-huh.
think it was France. We're just gonna say it was France.
Okay.
Could have been
I'll take
somewhere else. Um, and this guy was fighting through this valley, and the place was completely decimated.
Mhm.
Well, he survives World War One. He wants to go back and kind of relive some of his war stuff, just as almost like a therapeutic type thing. So he goes into this valley, and now he's just a tourist. He's a backpacker, and he's walking around this valley, and it's completely evacuated. It's still decimated, years after the war. And as he's walking, he's planning on spending a few days there, but he can't find any water. Right. So
Mhm.
he finally is like about to give up and leave. He hears the sound of sheep. And so looks up and he sees that there's a shepherd leading these sheep. And so he goes up to the shepherd, and the shepherd's like, "Hey, he's telling him, hey, everybody's evacuated this valley. There's not really much water around here, but hey, why don't you stay the night with me? I'll feed you. You'll have a place to stay." So he brings the shepherd in, or the shepherd brings him in, and he has this bucket of water that he is soaking acorns in, and he
Mhm.
has collected these acorns as he's been out, you know, feeding or like shepherding the sheep.
Uh-huh.
And he's talking with this traveler, and they're kind of connecting about the war and telling stories, and the whole time the shepherd's kind of like looking at these acorns and sorting them out.
Uh-huh.
Some he would toss and some he would keep. And then
Yeah.
the next morning, the shepherd goes, "Hey, you want to come and hang out with me today? Like, you could just hang out with me." And so as they're walking along with the sheep, the shepherd had kind of hardened the end of his staff so that as he was walking, and he had this satchel of acorns, and he just plunged in the ground, put it like, thought, "Oh, that might be a good spot for a tree."
Uh-huh.
And he's planting seeds. Well, the shepherd had been doing this for years.
Uh-huh.
And what was interesting as you were telling the story about just even lady in church,
Uh-huh.
this it reminded me of this because this guy then leaves and decides, "Hey, I'm going to go back to this valley and see
Uh-huh.
if this guy's still here." Probably 10
Okay.
years later, and
Uh-huh.
as he came back, the whole place was completely changed. There was wildlife again, and there was water again, and there was new life, and to the point where the government came in and said they had declared it like this miracle. right? Because like it's revitalized and people started moving
Yeah.
back in, and life was coming about, right? Because this valley that was decimated by war has been revitalized. And this guy knew, oh, it's not a miracle. It's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
persistent, like
Mm,
long obedience of the shepherd to just every day plant acorns,
yeah.
plant acorns. And then
Wow.
over time, like you look back and you go, look at what God has done with
Mm,
the little bit of obedience.
yeah.
And so I suspect that you will look back
Mm,
even on the 8 years ago, even on the 10 years ago, even on the, all of those, like you're going to be able to look back. And I hope that someday God gives you eyes to see this, where he goes, look what I was doing through your obedience this whole time.
wow.
How cool is that? And so and every once in a while, he gives us glimpses, right, of what he's done, as a lady comes up to you and says, man, it's changed the way I've communicated with my husband. It's like, well, if that's not fruit for God's kingdom, I don't know what is, right? Because there's an attack on marriage, certainly. And so I thank you for doing that. That's God's
Mm,
heart in you. Keep doing
mm,
that stuff.
thank
Like
you.
that. Don't underestimate that stuff,
Yeah.
because I think that's the good stuff. And I think
Right.
that at some point I'm going to be that guy who's been traveling and just, I show up to your house. I'm like, look at all this whole place is different because of you, Christy. This is so
Wow.
cool.
Oh,
Um,
amazing.
One more question. What if you were, as you dream,
Yeah.
like as this shepherd's heart, as this like hospitality and care and loving, caring, nurturing heart that God's obviously put in you, what does that look like? Like as you dream, what does that look like?
My big dream?
Yeah, the big dream.
Well, I don't know why, but like my heart just wants to be in Korea. Like I just I keep on like surrendering it back to the Lord. Like if this is me, Lord, just take it. Like I'm praying for desires and they are dying, but this desire for Korea just is just like growing and I can't
Wow.
shake it. And it's weird because things will come up like last Sunday, not this last Sunday, the one before. Out of nowhere, I'm just worshiping in the Sunday service. The sermon wasn't about anything related to this, but I was just worshiping and praying and praising the Lord. And this, like, just fully formed thought came to my mind. Christy, your mom is worried about your desire for Korea. Like, she's like, there's going to be war there. Like,
Yeah.
it's dangerous. Don't go. And I don't know why this thought came to me while I'm worshiping, but my response was
Mm,
like fully formed, just like as if I didn't think it, like the Lord impressed it upon me. I'm not going to put that on him, but it felt like the Lord gave me these thoughts of, I don't want to isolate myself from their suffering. I
mm,
want to enter in. And just like Christ came and entered our suffering, I want to enter their experience. Like, I don't want to be isolated from it. I don't want to be
mm,
far away praying and then going and then coming back. I want to be in it. And if it means war, it means war. And if it means death, it means death. But
mm,
I don't I don't want to hold back from their experience. Like I want to be there and in it. And if it's suffering, it's suffering. But just like, I don't know, it's just weird. Like things like that I just feel like I wasn't even thinking about Korea at that moment. Like, why did
When
I
did this
think
come from?
so things like that? And I'm just like, Lord, take this from me if you don't want it. And then at the
Yeah.
same time, like I read about, I can't remember who it was. I want to say it was like, gosh, who was it? I feel like it was a missionary that said, give me something or I die. Like some place. Give me
Mm.
something or I die. I can't remember what it was. Do you remember who I'm talking about? There's that quote,
I've heard that quote. I don't know who you're talking
right?
about though.
And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I can't remember either, but it came
Yeah.
to my mind and I just felt like, give me Korea or I die. Like of course not, but just that kind of longing is just there and I don't
Mm,
understand it. And things like the Lord will wake me up in the morning or I will wake up in the morning with a thought. And okay, I'm gonna back up. I'm just gonna answer your question.
go
So
for it.
your question was, what's the big dream? And
Yeah.
and I think I had mentioned briefly to you before, but it's kind of fleshed out a little bit more. But my heart would be to have a retreat center there, a place where I have a home, a place where I don't even need a great big giant home, but some land, a place that's restful. I think green pastures, I think
Mm,
still waters, just a place that's um quiet. And I feel like I would call it the shepherd's refuge. And
oh,
I found online I wanna have tiny houses, like, scattered around it as a retreat
yeah.
center where people could just come. They could come into my home, they could eat with me, like, have meetings. Like, I was even thinking, gosh, Summit could have, like, workshops there, and
Oh,
instead of
absolutely.
taking hotels, people could just, like, stay right there on the campus and just, like, walk and reflect and, so it would be like a retreat center where I would have tiny houses, and I found these tiny houses that are called shepherd's huts. They're called shepherd's huts, and so it's like,
Oh, so cool.
for my shepherd's refuge, and just to have a place and that they could be fed and nourished, and like I said, time to reflect, that pastors and their wives could come, and, like, men from the heartache of ministry and the burdens and pressures, and just
Mm,
retreat and restore and refresh, and like I said, like, the military to come for their workshops and summit things, and missionaries and pastors to come and have a place, but then also be in the country enough, but be also in community where reaching out to the people around me and bringing my neighbors into my home, and
mm.
having them in to share a meal with me and sharing Christ. And so that's kind of my
Love
big
it.
dream, is to have this place, and I want sheep and goats and chickens. And I just want
Oh, I
it to
love it.
be, and orchards. I want fruit trees. I just like I want it to be a place where people can come and just see the goodness of the Lord, feel and experience the
Mm,
goodness of the Lord, and have time to be quiet and reflect, and not with me, but like with me. And then
yeah.
also I've learned through this process of who God's made me to be, and I need that too. I need the green pastures. I need the still waters. I need the quiet and the ref, uh, refreshment, but like time to reflect. Like
Yeah.
that's how I'm going to serve best, is when I'm quiet inside and not in a bustling city, but just a place
Sure.
where I can serve out of that refreshment that I receive, and the time just nourishing myself in the word. And so that's my big dream. I
That is awesome. I
I don't
love
know
it.
if it
I
could ever
absolutely
happen,
love
but
it.
that's
Hey,
what I want.
well, so here's what I see. I see that God has that you don't have a job, and that you have enough money for a one-way ticket to Korea. And so I'm just calling it now. I don't know what I'm not saying that, say it the Lord. I'm just saying. Oh, that's so cool. How can I help you? How can we help you with that? Like, is there any,
Just,
like, what comes to mind? What do you
uh,
need to do that?
I mean, I guess I would need, and I've even said to the Lord, like, I've never cared about money. Like, I don't need to be rich, but I've started praying, Lord, give me money. Like, I want
Yeah.
to, I want to build this place. I want to build this place. It's not mine. It's not for me, but would you pour out resources so that I could do that? I would love to do that. And I don't have money. It's like, I mean, my financial advisors are like, you need to work because you're going to run out of money before you retire, and we're trying to save it for retirement. And I'm like, I want to retire, like,
Yeah.
and so part of me is like, okay, so I have some money. It's not enough to buy a retreat center or even like a
Yeah.
big piece of land. I don't even care if I have a tiny house on that place, and then just a big
Yeah.
shelter where I could put up barbecue grills. Like, I just want to feed people. I don't need much. A tiny house is all I care about, but a place
Yeah.
to welcome people. And
Mm.
so, I mean, I don't know what it would take. I don't know what it would take to buy land there. But I have money from Norm dying, but it's like my financial advisors put it away for me for retirement. And I'm ready to just say, you know what? That's how I want to live. That's how I want to die. Like, I don't want to work full time until I'm 72 and then cruise till I'm 90. That's like not what I'm all about. I
Yeah.
want to live and
Yeah.
serve now. And so I think prayer for like how to handle that.
I'm 100% behind you. You know that. Like, and
Yeah.
we will do anything that we can to support you in this. I love your heart. And I love, Christy, I just love the stories of God. And, I know your story, right? I heard it twice and it was just beautiful, especially, within the context of Korea. Right. But, I am I can't help but think that God is going to do incredible things, and so I'm hopeful with you. How
Thank
about
you.
that? Yeah. So, and I can't wait to see that story play out. And I really hope that we get to be a part of it somehow, right? Just to
That would
go,
be
hey,
so
let's
amazing. I mean, I would
let's
love
do it.
to do that in partnership with Summit. I just think what you're doing there and what Sunny's doing there and just the connections that it's so interesting to me that like all over Korea, people are like Summit people are scattered but gather. And I was like, well, we could have a Summit retreat center. Like,
Yeah,
and
for
this
sure.
ministry could be happening there. And Sunny could just like bring people and you could come and bring people. And I just if it could be a summit thing, I'm all there.
Well,
Like,
yeah, Sonny will bring people. If I know anything, Sonny will bring people to
right?
to the
Right?
retreat center.
Yeah.
She's
And I just
incredible.
love that there would be a kind of like a unity about it too, instead of like being
Yeah,
scattered in hotels and kind of and then just going out to eat, like gathering together, sharing a big long table at,
yeah.
being just together and having places to go and walk and be quiet, but being together. And I just love
Mm,
that idea. I love that, um,
mm,
having just a place where people could come. It's just like, it's your place, come here,
yeah.
and that they could come whenever, like a formal, a workshop or retreat, like a pastor's retreat or whatever that could look like, or just, I need to get away. Like,
It's an oasis of God's kingdom, right?
yeah,
It's just an oasis, a place that you
yeah,
can find rest and refreshment.
yeah.
I love that. I love that. I
That's my
really
dream.
hope that for you. I love it. But keep dreaming, keep praying. I'm praying for you. That's
Thanks.
amazing. Um, I always love talking with you. This is so good.
I
This
love
is so
talking
good.
with you.
You're so cheerful. Like you're just so like you can't help but smile, Christy. It's just awesome.